Okay, today I want to talk to you about rejection. Have you recently been rejected in some way? So it might be that you have been dating somebody and they decided to break it off with you, and you were really interested and excited to get to know this person, and it felt like it was really good match in many ways, and you were emotionally invested. They came back saying they are no longer interested. Or maybe you were rejected in your partnership in some way where you really opened your heart, you got vulnerable, and your partner just didn't meet you in it, dismissed it, minimized it, or just didn't even want to engage with you around it. Well, rejection over time can build, right? Where we start to close ourselves off after rejection, after rejection, after rejection. And what I want to share with you today in this video is that there are different forms of rejection, and then the level of intensity from that rejection is what I want to address. Because if you're sitting there just recently gone through a breakup where you had totally opened your heart, you totally opened up yourself to being way more vulnerable, then the rejection that comes at you is going to be extremely painful, right? And it can take months and months to get over that person. And I say that and share that with you because it is normal. I meet so many people when I'm out speaking and talking in real life where they say to me, I just felt like my heart got ripped out. And I can't seem to get over this person. It has been months, it has been years, and I'm still thinking about this person. And I want to say that I don't think this is normalized enough, which it's very normal to take 6 months to a year to even feel like, okay, I'm feeling a bit like myself again. I feel like I can put my heart back out there. And for some of you, it might even feel longer depending on who you are. But if that's the situation where you really put yourself out there, you really thought this could go somewhere, you really opened your heart, and then were met with rejection, that brings up inside of us some of the deepest pain that we could carry. Now, this pain that's coming up in the process of this rejection and letting go of somebody is not just about that relationship itself. It is really about a lot of the ways that we felt pained, unaccepted, not understood, ignored, left behind from our childhood, from our relationship, even with our parents. Now, this is not about blaming our parents. They truly did try to do the best that they could, but they didn't know what we needed as their child always. And we didn't really understand where they were coming from as parents, right? And so there's this gap, there's this miscommunication that happens for every parent and child, no matter what your upbringing was. And so a lot of the pain that comes up from a breakup like that, where you had really opened yourself up, it brings up so much pain from the past. It also brings up a lot of pain around what you desire and if you're going to ever have that again, and if you're ever going to be able to open your heart up again. And so when I looked at what was associated, like what was my pain that was associated to my past, I could very clearly see that there are ways that I translated my parents' relationship. I would say to people all the time that my parents should have gotten a divorce, but they didn't because of culture and religion. I would say that all the time. It is not something that I would say authentically. I can feel in my body now. I would absolutely say to you, they're still together. They are together because they are meant to be together. There is a higher purpose for them being together. And even if they don't see it, I can see it. And I feel that now, where I did not feel that at all before, right? And so I would say that all the time. But there was one thing that they did have really in common, where they were on the same page, where it felt like there was some peace and harmony around this in their partnership, which is culture, being in our culture, being more spiritual. They were both on the same page in that way. So that became something that was so important to me, where I was like, if I have that, if I have cultural connection, spiritual connection, then it won't break. Then I won't face rejection or pain in the way that my parents did. And we all do this. We all make up these vows, these unconscious ways that we want to protect ourselves from what we saw and observed and translated from our relationship with our parents and what we saw between them. And so what I did in that partnership with my husband when we first broke up is I was pushing that hardcore, right? I was like, you need to come to temple with me. You need to become vegetarian, because I'm vegetarian. And he wasn't vegetarian. And he didn't grow up going to temple all the time, right? And so these were things that I was so harping on and never really considered him in the equation. But I was harping on it because of my pain with how I saw my parents, the way that they related to one another. And I thought that was the antidote. This is all happening subconsciously, but I thought that was the antidote to really being in a powerful, beautiful, connected relationship. And yet it was the thing that was pulling us apart. And I'm not saying the whole relationship pulled apart just because of me, right? It always takes two, always, but I'm sharing with you my side of things. And so when I started to look at this, the way that I saw my parents and how that resistance was getting recreated in my partnership, and specifically in that partnership, it felt like that was my way of pushing love away, my way of pushing him away. That's when I started to do the deeper work and wanted to view my parents' relationship authentically, emotionally, in not just a reframe of the brain. That doesn't work, that doesn't last. It's something really shift inside of me so that that doesn't get recreated again, where I become so consumed by this being like culturally being on the same page, spiritually being on the same page, so consumed by that I don't see anything else, right? So I did that work. And that's why I can say to you today that I don't feel any of that. And so when Hemel came back into my life, that's my husband's name. When he came back into my life, that was something that I had authentically worked on. So Hemel had come back into my life. We were even married a couple of years after that. And that's when I started to see, because we had fallen back into the same pattern. So I share this with you because I hadn't done the deeper work in that period, right? That's what I want to share with you. And he still came back because we were meant to be together. There was something cosmically bringing us back together. And so I started to see and connect what had happened when we were broken up. And then 2 years into our marriage, feeling the same way, feeling that loneliness again, feeling like we're not on the same page, feeling all the things. And he was reflecting that back to me again in the same way. And that's when I was like, this has got to shift. That's when I started to see, wow, okay, the way I've seen my parents is what's really making me be consumed by this in my marriage now, which is the same thing that I was consumed with when we first broke up. And this has got to shift. And so I have authentically shifted that. And what happened in my partnership is I was able to see who was in front of me for who he was. And he does go to temple with me. We are on the same page with a lot of these things. That's because he was able to come around to it for himself, that it was his way to meet me, but in a way that was also coming from a deeper understanding inside of him. So I say all of this to help you see that when there is this deeper rejection happening, there's so much more happening inside of us. Right? There's so much more happening inside of us. And 60% of that has to do with how we were raised and what we saw there and how we translated that into the partnership, into how much we think we are worthy of something. And so he needed to come around to that within himself. And when he did, which he did do because he knew it was important to me, it was also important to him, but he needed to come to that realization inside of himself first and come into the relationship again, meeting me in that because he chose that for himself, not because I told him that is what I needed or wanted and that that's some sort of rule, right? But I'm sharing all of this with you to help you see that where that first pain of when he broke up with me, that rejection, and what was coming up for me, because it took me a long time to get through that. It also felt like I didn't quite get it in that breakup time completely. I got it once we got married, which was the very same thing that happened during that breakup time. I'm also sharing that with you because that can happen to us. It can be that this particular rejection that's happening to you right now is the wake up call to see what was happening before in previous relationships even, and that you didn't quite get it just yet, or it wasn't deep enough of a pain to help you wake up in a way, right? Or there was somebody else that came along, so you didn't really have to look at some of this stuff, but now you're left looking at it, right? So I just really want to emphasize that that's where you want to put your focus during this time while you're feeling into all of this rejection that's coming up for you and this attachment that's coming up for you. And sometimes this ruminating and feeling consumed by this person, right? It is 60% childhood, 40% that relationship. All right. So I began this whole video sharing with you that there are different levels of rejection. I started at the very top, which is the deepest form of rejection, which is when you've really opened your heart up to somebody. You were so into them. You were maybe in love with them or falling in love with them. And then you were met with that rejection, right? The next tier down is that you could start to see a future with this person. You liked them, but you hadn't totally opened your own heart up completely. You were still a bit guarded. Maybe they were a bit guarded, or maybe they were very open to you. You just weren't totally sure about the situation, right? And then they decide like, okay, it just doesn't feel like you're that into me. I don't think this is going to work. Or maybe you decide, I don't know how into this I am, and I don't think this is going to work, but it still plagues you, right? There's still this feeling of like, did I let something good go? Did I just not see what was in front of me? Or did they pick up on these ways that I was pushing them away unknowingly? And that's what got reflected back to me, right? But you were still a bit guarded. You still weren't letting your heart completely open or fall in love. But it stings. It stings. The rejection still stings, whether you decided this wasn't right for you or they decided it wasn't right for the two of you. And so there's also that level, which can still take time, right? This is what I really, really want to convey. And I keep saying that, like, these are the pieces that I want to convey because I just have so many people come to me with these different levels of rejection and they think they need to get over it right away. That there's so much emotion coming up, so much anxiety, so much attachment, a lot of crying, right? And it feels abnormal. But the thing is that it is absolutely normal. And I want to normalize it because even for myself with that breakup that I'm speaking to you about with my husband, I was in denial for 3 months that it was even true, that it was even a reality. And then it took me another 3 months to even decide, like, okay, I think maybe I could put myself back out there, but my heart was still with him, right? So 6 months where I was like, maybe I could even put myself back out there. So it takes time. And some of you might even be like, I'm years into this, right? And what I will say is that the time starts to condense a bit more when you are actively working through the rejection and the heartbreak and what is coming up for you through that, right? The time starts to condense itself. But when we aren't working through those pieces completely, it just seems to stay in our system longer and longer and longer. So then there's that other second tier that I'm talking about where you weren't really open, but you were met with this rejection, or you actually said that this isn't right, but there was a sting to it, right? And even in that situation, it is a moment to take a pause for a second to assess what it is that felt off for you and name it. Like for some people, it can feel like, okay, I'm with this person. I'm really attracted to them. We do connect. It seems right, but I don't know. I don't feel like that intellectual stimulation, or I don't feel this emotional connection all the way. And so is that necessary? Do I need to have that? There's a lot of questioning around it. And I'll tell you that we need to name the specific thing that is happening for you, and or the thing that you could see coming out inside of you in those interactions with this person, right? So let's just say that other person was so into you and you were like, I don't know, right? And a part of you wanted to come around, but you could feel that the other person was a little lost inside of the relationship, lost inside of you, sort of like their admiration for you like made them a little lost. And you really love it when somebody knows their opinions, know what they want, what their desires are, claim it. They challenge you. Maybe you're somebody like that and they weren't doing all of that. So just to be able to name, well, actually this part where I just felt like they were lost, I didn't know what their opinions were. I didn't know what they really wanted. It just felt like they kept acclimating to me. And that didn't feel good. I want somebody that can share their opinions, that can share their thoughts and share their desires. And just naming that can be powerful to be like, okay, I know that for next time. And just so you know, this is why relationships are so nuanced. Like that other person could show up like that if maybe you challenge them around that too, right? Like they could open up in a new way that you haven't seen, that they haven't given themselves permission to open up in that way. So just naming it is really powerful and to understand that more, okay? Now the third tier below that is really like, it felt like there was a low level connection, but there was something just wasn't jiving, right? There was a way that you were going on these dates, you weren't totally into them. You could kind of feel they weren't totally into you, but you were giving them the benefit of the doubt, right? So there was a lot of benefit of the doubt, but then they came back and said, I don't think this is gonna work. And like sort of what happens in human psychology is like what we then can't have, we start to want suddenly sometimes, right? And so there's that can come through of like, oh, okay, well now they don't want me, so I'm feeling like I want them. But is that actually true? And that's that third tier is what you really want to ask yourself. Is that really true for me? Or am I just feeling the sting of this rejection and I really wasn't into this person, and now that I can't have them, there's this feeling of wanting them, right? So those are the three tiers that I wanted to share with you today, and help yourself kind of put yourself in one of those tiers. Not because I believe in labels. I actually don't believe in labels. But if you put yourself in one of those tiers, you can start to analyze and understand what are the depths of what's happening to you on a grander level, right? Like what was that specific situation connected to? What is my growth edge with this situation that I just went through? And how do I step into that? And so that's why I'm saying put yourself in one of those three categories. And if you're at the bottom, the third tier, you are asking yourself like, okay, some hard questions like, why do I want something when I can't have it? Or what was blocking me naming that, right? What was it that wasn't quite right with this situation? And sometimes it's hard to know, okay? Sometimes it's hard to know. And that's where support is so powerful, because it is hard to know, right? And in that second tier, it's really understanding, okay, how did I show up guarded? Or what was preventing me from opening up all the way? Naming that, right? And that third tier is bringing up just kind of the depths of everything that's been sitting inside of you from your childhood, honestly, and with this person, and questioning if you can ever have that again, right? So it's about looking at that. So no matter what tier you're in, there's some sort of self-reflection that is necessary. And I will tell you that support is also really powerful when you can't really name these things. And so I actually have these love match readings that I do. So if you are confused about like what your connection was with this person, or you're trying to name what it is that was not working in that partnership, dating experience, connection with somebody, then I can help you with that. I can help you understand through pictures. So I ask you to submit pictures, and you submit these pictures, and I can read the energetics of the picture and the auras of the picture and tell you a lot about whether this person was into you, whether you were into them, what might have been the block between the two of you. Those are the three areas I focus on: your openness, their openness, and the connection between the two of you. And I can really share with you and give you some clarity on what are some next steps for you specifically. So these love match readings, they're $50. I have on the page, I'll post it below this video. I have on that page how many spots are available, so you can see if I'm taking on people around these love match readings right now or not, because sometimes I get a bunch of them. So right below this video is the link. They are $50 for the love match reading. They're normally $97, but right now they're $50, and I can share with you and answer some of these these questions if that's something that you feel excited to know that would give you a lot of clarity. All right. If not, I can't wait to hear in the comments what tier you're in and what you're feeling. Subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed this video, because honestly, I just love everything about relational dynamics. And so I share about not just partnership or dating experiences, I share about your relationship with your parents, kids, all kinds of things. Subscribe to this channel if you liked this video, and check out my next video, which is all about if you are dating or you are in partnership and you have this thing where when somebody says something and does something different and you really zero in on that and it bothers you, you're frustrated by that, and you either withdraw when you see that or you grill somebody when you see that, I answer and talk about that particular situation and where it's coming from on a deeper level in that video. So check that out now, and I'll see you next time. Bye.